Hello and welcome to this edition of Conversations. With me on this discussion is my good friend, Professor Mohamed Hassan from Belgium. Welcome to our discussion, Professor Mohamed.
Thank you very much, Comrade Elias.
It's
I'm
been a
glad
long
that you invite.
time.
It is very long time indeed.
Indeed. By way of introduction, Professor Mohamed Hassan is based in Belgium. He's a geopolitical analyst, an expert of the Horn of Africa region. He's originally from the Ethiopia, Somalia region. He has been a diplomat for the Ethiopian government in the 1990s, and he has written several books on the Horn of Africa, the Middle East, and so on and so forth. So I'm very glad to have you back on this show, Mohammed, because as I said, many of our viewers have been asking, when are you going to restart your program? You have been busy traveling to the region, and I'm so happy to have you back again.
Thank you very much, Elias. I'm glad to be invited by you, and we will continue the discussion because our young people, the diaspora, and I'm sure also the people at home They have a lot of question in their mind. We have no crystal ball, me and you, but we can entertain, we can try to give a glimpse of points that they can further read and be aware. It is awareness is a very important tool. When you are aware and you understand where do you live, your environment, who is your friend, who is those from external forces who are coming and troubling the environment and so on, will be clear gradually. Knowledge is wealth, and well knowledge also it is health. It can protect you not to make a mistake and to understand also what's happening in the region. That's what I believe.
Indeed, I could not agree with you more. And in that regard, your sharp analysis does provide indeed the knowledge necessary to
Thank
to
you
make
very
sense.
much. We are.
Hello, we have a technical problem. I think it's your internet connection. Can you hear me? All right. I think my good friend Mohammed is having some technical problems. But for those who are just joining us, please hit the like button because that helps us to spread the word further with the algorithm, as it is called, the computer language. So don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. This topic of discussion is on the current hot issue of Red Sea security, of course, Eritrea being an integral part of the Red Sea littoral, and its global geopolitical as well as economic ramifications of what it implies, the current crisis on the Red Sea. So let's jump into it, Professor Mohammed. By way of introduction, I would like us to begin with Yemen, because we're hearing a lot these days about the so-called Houthis, the Ansarullah movement, which for the most part, I think, is controlling about 80% of Yemeni territory. What is the situation in Yemen? And give us a brief historical background, if you will, going back to the 19th century and bringing it up to date.
Yemen is a very old country. It had an old civilization, and the civilization of Yemen, it have also an impact in our region. Even the alphabet, which is now used in Ethiopia and Eritrea, the Sabian alphabet, came from Yemen. Yemen is a very old country which have different type of civilization has passed in Yemen, and Yemenis are tough fighters for that matter. They have maintained for a long time their independence from the external forces, except southern Yemen. Later on, Britain in 1839 took Aden. Yemenis also have a sophisticated agricultural scheme, which they have introduced to the world. The terrace farming, because Yemen is a mountainous area, they have developed a new technique of irrigation and farming in the terrace, and that have been introduced by Yemenis to Indonesia until China. Yemenis also, despite of when we speak Yemen proper geographically. The Yemenis, they were very big travelers and traders. Even they brought a big part of Indonesia and Malaysia, and to a certain extent part of China. Islamic belief that Yemenis, they were seafarer people, and a brave people for that matter. Of course, nation is a new concept and a new development, but Yemenis also ruled by different chieftains or by different groups like Hadramaut, which is a very big part of southern Yemen. Then you have the center of southern Yemen. Then you have the middle Ta'iz areas and so on. It's also mountain area. Then you have the area of Sana'a until Sa'da. This is the Yemenis of what they call them the Zaydis after they left Arabia. Imam Zayd is the third Imam of the Shia, but it is the Zaydis extended from Sa'da until Ta'iz and so on, and they have created a sort of a system which kept colonialism and imperialism and even other hegemonist forces at bay because
Yes,
of their...
indeed, in this regard, Professor Mohamed Hassan, one could compare it with Afghanistan, but more so. They call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires.
That is true.
By the same analogy, Yemen could also be considered
It
as a
is.
graveyard of invaders and empires.
It is. It is. In fact, at one time, Yemen, it was a huge number of the population. They were Jewish, and then later on, Islam came. There were also some Christians there. There are people, farmers for very long time, and they know how to deal with stones. Their architect until now is very marvelous. The whole Yemen, the way they build their buildings and their houses, until now fascinated modern architects. For that is Yemen had a very good tourism, especially for those who are interested in architect of old Yemen. So beyond that, also Yemen slowly are closer to the people of Horn of Africa, Eritrea, Ethiopia now, Somalia, and so on. A lot of Yemenis came, settled in Eritrea, created their own communities, mingled there. They brought their food habits to the region. They later on also Italian fascism by allying with the Imamate, which means the North Yemen, brought a lot of workers of Yemeni origin to build the road between Asmara and Addis Ababa. And then the Yemenis also became the one who introduced small markets and shop everywhere in Ethiopia. There was no Yemenis who didn't have a shop in any village in Ethiopia, whether it is in the south, east, and west. Yemenis also, they were used by British paid, but by Italians became soldiers to conquer the Italians to conquer southern Somalia. It was conquered by Yemeni soldiers, which is they were paid and brought from Yemen, and because of unemployment and a lot of other things. So Yemenis, I could say, they are part of parcel culturally, psychologically, mentality-wise, and geographical-wise and historical-wise. They are closer to the people of Horn of Africa.
The organic linkage, you could say, of the Horn of Africa to the Gulf of Arabia, historically and civilizationally, as well as in modern times.
That is true. And
so bring us up to speed, if you will, because of time constraints of recent Yemeni history, Ottoman in the 19th century up to the 20th century.
Of course, Yemen was not a centralized state. At one stage that it is different, Yemen was ruled by different ruling class, but the most important one, the Imamate, which came from Sa'da until Ta'iz, which until Sana'a and so on. They are a huge group, and that's what they call them, the Zaydis. But the Zaydis, their fiqh or their rhythm of praying and so on is not different from the other Yemeni, Sunni Yemenis. They pray in the same mosque, they have the same tradition and the same psychology. Anyway, what happened is that it is Yemen in general came into contact with external forces beyond our area, is specific Britain. Britain have taken southern Yemen, particularly Aden, as a fueling station for their troops, which is controlling India and passing. With the immediately as that the contradiction between Britain and France started, and the French also, they jumped in and they controlled northern Djibouti, and then slowly expanded, and they created this Djibouti we see. And of course, northern Yemen remained under the leadership of Imamate. It kept its sovereignty, it kept its independence, and it have never been also subdued by the Ottomans. This is one part of the history of Yemen. But gradually, Yemen integrating into global economy and a global imperialist network, a new Yemen start emerging. The first thing of Yemen is that it is the relationship of Imamate with Ford company. Ford company, which is producing automobiles in United States, and had contact with the Imamates and wanted a laborer. And the first Yemeni laborers were brought to United States is in the beginning of the century. And then gradually also Britain brought the first Muslim minorities in UK where they were Yemenis, were brought as workers. The other character of the Yemenis, because of their trade capacity, particularly they are merchants, that they have expanded to Indonesia. There is a huge Yemeni origin Indonesians. They are also in Malaysia, for example, the ideologue in Malaysia of the party which is in power of Mahathir. He is an Yemeni origin. His name is Abdullah. So you could see Yemenis expanded beyond Africa, and they were expanded also to Asia. But with the coming of imperialism and British controlling Aden and gradually expanding and controlling other tribal areas, which they have created geographically, which is called South Yemen, Hadramaut, and other provinces. That's one side. The north was not being controlled. It remained in the hand of the Imamates. But the imperialist interference, now and then it happens, but the Imamates, they kept their independence. To a certain extent, they didn't allow. The only way that any Western or European power could little bit penetrate and create an alliance with North Yemen, it was the fascist regime Mussolini. Mussolini had an idea to create his own empire, including Yemen and the Red Sea and so on. He had his own mini program to create that, and he had created a cordial relationship with Yemen. And gradually, it is also the modern Yemeni army in the north, gradually the modernization. It started with the relationship with the fascist state. The fascists have never controlled Yemen, but they appeased the northern Yemenis. So to come back is that I could divide that Yemen modern history is, I could say that the transformation in Aden, the bringing of foreign workers and foreign elements, which is a good number of them are Somalis and Indians, and gradually British colonialism expanding and controlling the other tribal lords or chiefs or sultanates until Hadramaut, but closing Aden for themselves. So at one time, Aden became one of the most important harbor in the region. There was no Dubai by that moment. There was no other harbor. It is a hub, Aden, to go and to make a shopping in Aden. And at that time, just before the independence and the struggle of South Yemenis, it was Aden. And so you could see that the Southern Yemenis influence in our region. You could see on the Somali situation, they introduced a new dress for women. They also introduced a new music to the Somali tradition. Best musicians and best oud, what they call a guitar of Yemen, which was Yemenis, introduced it from India, was gradually have entered into Somali music. Al Hudaidi and the best musicians, they passed away a long time ago. They are born in Yemen and brought up in Yemen. Not only that, also modern thinking with the Yemeni struggle also, it have expanded. It reaches until Somalia because the second biggest community in Aden, they were Somali speaking, like Rega Somal, which you say in Asmara, there is Ma'alla Somal in Aden. Aden became a modern city built in a modern way, which suits the British thing, even though Yemenis have a very good architect and they can build a very good house. Anyway, to come, the two Yemen, one is separated from the other, which the British separated the south, and controlled it, and the other one is under the imamates. But when modern thinking started developing and modern nationalism was developing, not only in Yemen, but it's in the whole region, including a region until Egypt and the coming of Nasser to power, the creation of the Ba'ath Party in Syria. Then it is the creation of the Ba'ath Party of Iraq in 1958. Arab republicanism, Arab nationalism, Arab unity concept, it developed, and this had also a boomerang in Yemen. It affected both Yemenis, that it is the Yemeni of the north and the south at the same time. But Yemeni nationalists and Yemeni patriotic democratic forces and revolutionary forces, all of them have agreed with one Yemen. The unity of Yemenis, it is holy, it cannot be touched. That we are Yemenis, we were separated by colonial forces, and we want for unity. This is one part of it. This thinking later on developed. It affected and it became now the urbanization in Sana'a, the emerging of a small working class, a big working class emerging in the south. The consciousness rise very fast, and of course the coming of Nasser in 1952 and overthrowing the kingdom there. And this had also a boomerang of nationalism, patriotism, and so on and so on. And in the north, that influence also affected the officers in the army, because Yemeni army was built by the imamates with the relationship they had with other countries. But it is not enough modernized, but the modernized officers and rank and file, they were also listening to this discourse of Cairo, Radio Cairo. They are writing books, pamphlets, and so on. The concept of republicanism and building a new Yemen on new basis developed. And this development in one side in Yemen, northern Yemen, continued. In the south, also the same kind of development developed. Now I will concentrate in the north, and then I will go to the south. In the north, finally, that it is the officers, Salal and others, the Republicans, took over the power, overthrew the imamates, and controlled the state power. This brought an external intervention. Because of this new thinking, it's not only affected Yemen, it affected also Saudi Arabia. That it is even member of the royal family, young princes defected to Cairo and accepted that its Arab nationalism is necessary. Pilots also defected, taking. So this concept of modern thinking start also penetrating Saudi Arabia, and this brought the House of Saud in danger, because after the oil industry, Aramco was built in the MAM and so on, and Saudi Arabia becoming an oil producing country and so on. So Saudi working class and embryo Saudi working class emerged, and there were also expert Americans who are working there, earning 7, 10 times more than the Saudis and so on. So a trade union concept developed. And that trade union, the first time, the Saudis in the 50s, Saudi workers start striking and asking an independent trade union, bringing new ideas. From this also, democratic movement, even two communist parties emerged, one a Maoist, another one pro-Moscow. This frightened the ruling class, particularly by that moment King Faisal was ruling. So King Faisal, he wanted to roll back what is happening in Yemen. This virus is becoming nearer to him and infecting, and also it is Saudi Arabia itself.
Of course, we have to remember also in the 1960s, Egyptian leader Jamal Abdel Nasser intervened on the side of the
Indeed.
Republicans to help them in their fight against the royalists.
That is true. That is the intervention of Nasser came once it is Saudi Arabia decided to roll back the Republican regime and intervened in support of the imamates. The imamates ran away, They went to Saada. From there, they went to Saudi Arabia, got a gun, and so on. So King Faisal of Saudi Arabia's thinking is that this virus have to be stopped because it will damage us, and it will bring also the same situation to us. It frightened the House of Saud. And then within Saudi Arabia, the concept of trade unionism, new modern concept, and so on, it threatened the Saudi royal family, and it is maybe is that it will overthrow them because they have seen King Farouk of Egypt was overthrown by Nasser. They have seen that it is the in Iraq also it was overthrown. In Syria it is overthrown. So they thought that they are encircled by this republican idea.
This
By that mode,
pan-Arab nationalism, you would say.
pan-Arab nationalism. Of course, King Faisal, his brother-in-law, the one who was leading the intelligence service of Saudi Arabia, a very sophisticated man, you could say, for his time. He's an Albanian origin, and his sister, she's married to King Faisal. This is the man. He said that to stop this virus of republicanism, there is only one solution. He said Saudi Arabia should not have a modern working class. A modern working class by itself a virus. He said it needs a trade union. From there, patriotism will come, demands will increase, democratization issue will come, republicanism will come. So he said we should not create Saudi working class. And that is a very far-sighted decision of this man. And from that day on, Saudi Arabia decided not to have a Saudi working class, except guest workers. Of course, in northern Yemen, the Republicans took over. Nasser intervened. About 9,000 Egyptian soldiers died. Even Nasser later on regretted, and but they could not
He
overthrow.
said when the intervention of Nasser ended in 1969, just before he died, is reputed to have said that one of his worst mistakes was to intervene in Yemen because the
That
Yemenis
is
were
true.
fierce
That is
fighters,
true.
and many Egyptians
Yemenis
died.
are, you cannot subjugate them. Yemenis are fierce fighter and very independent in psychology. But Nasser, he lost about 9,000 Egyptian soldiers, and he regretted for that. And of course, the Saudis subsidized the money, and they brought mercenaries and all this, and the weapon and this and this. But they could not overthrow the Republican government. It had weakened it. Finally, as a compromise came, that it is Salal, the Republican leader, have to resign, and a mild one or a centrist one, Mohammed al-Iryani, he took over the power, and the relationship gradually between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, especially North Yemen, became smooth. And Saudi Arabia also accepted certain things to Yemenis, that Yemeni workers can come to Saudi Arabia, and a special type of work permit was organized to Yemenis, which they call it Iqama, permit 44. It is only Yemenis that they don't need somebody to control them. They have the right to do business, they have the right to work, and so on. And a lot of huge Yemeni working class and Yemenis from the north and so on, they went there. In the south, the situation is totally different. First of all, because Yemen, southern Yemen, Aden is a cosmopolitan. A good number of Yemenis from the south also went to study outside, and so on and so on. And of course, the same situation as in northern Yemen, that the Republican, anti-colonialist, progressive movements developed. And this movement, finally, they took an armed gun against the colonial system. In fact, the
The
person,
colonial system being the British
The British,
in southern Yemen.
yes, and the one who was sent there and to study and to weaken the national independence movement, he is an experienced from Rhodesia. This man, he had also an experience had as British advisor in Eritrea, Edward Kennedy Tasfaskis. He
Yeah, who
also made
later
an
was knighted and became Sir Kennedy Travaskis.
certain, yes, Travaskis.
He
He was also
he had written a book about Eritrea a colony in transition. I think it was published in 1952. You were
Indeed,
right.
he's a far-sighted man comparatively and he understood the social. He had a good experience in Eritrea, and finally he was sent to Aden, South Yemen, and his idea was, in fact, he's the father of the Gulf countries. He's the one who created the Gulf countries, and he wanted also to change southern Yemen minus Aden, another Gulf states. I mean, appointing clan leaders and so on to be autonomous, not. But the struggle in Yemen, it went very, very deep. It became mature. It have different forces within it. There is Nasserist force. There is two Ba'athists from Libya, from Syria, and Iraq, and then later on that a member of Politburo of Indonesian Communist Party, a Yemeni origin from Hadramaut, he came and influenced the national movement and brought socialism, and the idea of Marxism-Leninism was brought by Yemeni Indonesian. He was member of the Politburo of
There you go again. There's some technical glitch. It's your internet connection, I think. But until we get him back, we would like to remind you that this is a panel discussion on Eritrea, Red Sea security, and the ramifications on the current crisis, ramification on global geopolitics and economy. And my guest is Professor Mohamed Hassan from Belgium. We're currently experiencing some technical difficulties, I believe, on his side. But until he returns, I'd like to remind you to please hit the like button and subscribe. Let's hope he's going to log back again. We have been going at length into analyzing or contextualizing the situation in Yemen, its historical background, how North Yemen developed as a modern state, and how southern Yemen under British colonialism and later, of course, independence in 1970, and finally the two Yemens coming back together. Okay, I think we have you back. Can you hear me, Professor Mohammed?
Yes, I hear you. Yes, it breaks sometimes in and.
Okay, it's okay. Now continue from where you have left. I think we are in around 1970 when British colonialism ends in southern Yemen, and South Yemen becomes a free
Independent.
republic, People's
Yes.
Democratic Republic of Yemen, as it was called, PDRY.
Indeed. In South Yemen, later on, the Socialist Party was declared, and it was the ruling party. But in the Socialist Party, there were different forces. There were the two Ba'athists, Iraqi Ba'athists and Syrian Ba'ath. They were Nasserist, and then there were communist, which is led by Abdel Fattah Ismail and Antar and so on. So inside it is the party sometimes emerges a contradiction. The first contradiction is that it is the Ba'athists, the Iraqi Ba'athists within the party, revolted against the party and they were crushed. The second was a very devastating one, which is also the Syrian Ba'ath Party members like
Mohammed, if you can limit the movement of the mic, because it's constantly making noise as you move.
Okay. What happened is the internal struggle in the Yemeni Socialist Party, which is ruling southern Yemen, this devastated the party. The first contradiction came with the pro-Iraqi Ba'athists within the party. They revolted against the party and they were crushed. The second one is even a devastating one, which is the Syrian part, which have and these have killed the most important progressive or socialist forces. They were killed, like Abdul Fattah Ismail and the others. They were killed. Then the party became very weak. But in program, the party itself is the same like the parties in the north. They believe in the unity of Yemen, and
Yes.
that unity is for them it is holy. That it is.
As a footnote of history, also to remind our young viewers that in the 1970s, southern Yemen did assist Eritrea's struggle for independence, the National Liberation of Eritrea, led by the EPLF in particular. It had a very close tie. But then, of course, when the Soviet Union intervened on the side of the Derg military junta in Ethiopia in the late 1970s, southern Yemen switched sides and abandoned the Eritrean struggle and sided with the Derg regime in Ethiopia. Just a footnote of history to
Yeah, it
remind.
is this. It shows that it is the Cold War. They intervened, or they wanted to play a role in the Cold War, which is not their own war, and they regret that also now, which was had weakened also their own position. Of course, later on, that it is which devastated the party and weakened the party is that the second revolt within the party, led by Ahmed Nasser, and so on, and killed a big part of what he considered the communist leadership of the party, of the Yemeni Socialist Party. So the party became very weak. In the north, situation continued, and finally, a young officer who took over, Ali Abdullah Saleh, took over the power before the unity of Yemen.
I
And
believe
of
in
course,
1979, if I'm not mistaken. Ali Abdullah Saleh, the
he
young
took the
colonel,
power in the north.
in
Yes, he took the power
1979.
1979 in the north, but later on, the unity came because of both of them, the weakened Socialist Party of the South and Ali Abdullah Saleh and so on. They agreed one Yemen, and they agreed on that. And Yemen was united. By 1990, the war against Iraq came. And of course, Yemen, the coalition of the Socialist Party and Ali Abdullah's party and so on, they have united, and they didn't want US intervention in the region. And of course, they went to Saddam Hussein and they told him that you have to remove your troops from Kuwait. And finally, the war started. And before the war, in the Security Council, Yemen voted against the war. And for that, they paid a very big price. This is the beginning of Yemen crisis, you could say. And because of that, a huge number of workers who worked in Saudi Arabia have left to southern Yemen, and Yemeni currency start getting weaker, and inflation have increased, and this brought a crisis in Yemen economy. The second episode, which also brought, is the narrow nationalist, or you could say the right wing of southern Yemenis, 1993, unilaterally decided for secession. And this was crushed by all other Yemeni forces, including Ali Abdullah Saleh, and he forced them. That was the success of him, and this have boosted his personality and his ego. After a while, that it is, despite of the economic crisis was going on, then Ali Abdullah Saleh, he also embarked in one of his second adventure, was the war against terrorism or terror after 11 September. This made him to ally with United States and Great Britain, and they used a lot of drones for killing Yemeni personalities, religious leaders, and all this they were called. So this is a situation was created in Yemen, and finally, with the anger of the population increasing, the killing of the Yemenis is increasing, and so on. Finally, a popular revolt came. And the popular revolt, which is started from Saada until Taiz and until Sana'a, and then everywhere there was a popular revolt. And Ali Abdullah Saleh finally was overthrown, and Ali Abdullah Saleh gave to his vice president Abdul Rabbo to be the president of United Yemen. But the popular revolt have dashed their mass bases, and they cannot control Yemen. And here is that
If I may
understanding.
interrupt you here, Mohammed, the popular revolt as it started, of course, from the north, what are called the Houthis. Why is the name, from where does this name, the Houthi, come? They don't call themselves Houthis, they call themselves Ansar Allah. But
Yes,
who is Al Houthi?
Houthi is the leader who marched from Saada to Sana'a, and later on he was killed. That's why they are called Houthis. To mean
Hussein
that
Al
they have,
Houthi, after their
yes,
leader.
after their leader, but
And the current
but it,
leader, Abdul Malik Al Houthi, is
it is his
his
son,
brother.
his son,
Is
his,
it his
bro-
son or his brother?
his
I
son
mean,
or brother, I don't know, but he's the family of the Houthis. The Houthis is a laqab, what they call it is it is little bit to belittle the
mm,
name which was given to belittle the Yemeni uprise. Of course, now here we have to see that it is Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, particularly Saudi Arabia. They say there is an extension of Iran using the Houthis and so on, and it is very dangerous that Iranian domination in the region is expanding. I think that analysis was very, very wrong. I'm sure that if the most eloquent experience on this issue, the son of King Faisal, Turki bin Faisal, later on who became the leader of the intelligence service of Saudi Arabia, his opinion is totally different from the opinion of others, of the young people now is leading Saudi Arabia. Of course, he resigned after 11 September because he's the one who have recruited the Bin Ladens and so on and so on. And what happened is exaggerated fear of Iran intervention in Yemen
mhm.
and Saudi Arabia fighting
This
them.
fear from the Saudis that the Iran is going to dominate the region, the Shia crescent in Lebanon, in Syria, and now to their south, the southern flank in Yemen.
Indeed,
That
indeed, and this
that
is that is true. This is the way they reasoned about it, but their understanding was a bit shallow. First of all, it is Hezbollah is a creation of Israel. There was no Hezbollah when in 1982 Sharon invaded and he went until
you mean, of
Beirut.
course, as a result of resistance
As
to
uh, uh,
Zionist
uh, later
aggression.
on came, yes, because it is 1982 when Sharon moved out and went unto Lebanon. The south of Lebanon, they were tired of Palestinian guerrilleros who are fighting, shooting on the Israelis, and the Israelis coming and bombing the southern Shia Lebanese peasants. But it
Mhm.
is once Sharon reached there and then finally chased away the Palestinians and occupied southern Lebanon, they have understood what does it mean,
Mhm.
occupation. So the first movement came from Amman. Later on, Hezbollah became and well organized, and we have seen in 2006 Israeli attempt and Hezbollah defeat them, and now it is one of the strongest one. This also brings a sort of a paranoia in Saudi Arabia, as if they are building a Shia crescent around them. The second is
The circle. Okay, if I can remind you once again, Mohammed, the movement of the mic is
okay,
creating
okay,
constant noise. Maybe
good, good.
it's hitting the either the table or your computer keyboard. Try,
Okay, okay,
try to limit your movement.
yeah, yeah, okay. I will hold it.
All right,
The
let's
other
continue.
is
Sorry to interrupt.
the young generation who have taken over Saudi Arabia. I think their experience was not very deep. They are not well thoroughly taught politician, I think. I remember Saudi Arabia, the new young leadership, they wanted to show Yemenis a lesson and how strong they are, but they never understood Yemeni psychology.
And
And they
Yemeni
bombed.
history for that matter.
Yes, for that matter, because these are studied in Western world, they are another type of generation. Maybe their understanding is about Yemeni history is very deep. Plus, because they grow up in a wealthy situation, they look down on the Yemenis probably, and this caused them to make a strategical mistake by alienating Yemen and by bombing Yemen and fighting Yemen. The other thing
The
that Saudi
question
Arabia,
also arises, Muhammad, uh, as to why Yemen was alienated from becoming a member of the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which
that
includes, of course, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, but not Yemen. Uh,
that is true.
could this be a factor also of
Yes, it is. I
grievances?
think I think Yemen is not Qatar, Yemen is not Emirates, Yemen is not Bahrain, ruled by local fiefdom families. Yemen is a complicated country with a complicated political visions. That it is their middle class, their politicians, and so on, are varied in like a restaurant in a menu. So it is probably they thought that they will infect us with a virus, but it was the best for them was, I think, at that moment, if they have decided and create a good neighborhood concept and integrate Yemen, that Yemenis could have contributed also in creation wells, not for, in Yemen only, also in the other areas. That's the so-called the Gulf Council could be dynamic and much better for them and less costly than bombing. But they didn't do that, and that is a mistake. It's a serious strategical mistake. Of course, with the Houthis, when they were bombed and they were seen like that, they have to look for friends. And their friends, the first one will be Hezbollah in Iran. And now they are well armed and survived all the thing. And now this situation, what we see on the Red Sea, it is the Houthis are going directly in support or in solidarity with Gaza revolt. That is also is a mistake. To come
Okay,
to
so
conclusion,
suffice to say then, after the overthrow of the Ali Abdullah Saleh's regime in Sana'a, I believe in 2011 or 2012, uh, then his vice president, Abdurrahman Hadi, come into power, but still facing resistance, in particular from Ansarullah in the north, the Houthi, in so-called. Eventually, Ali Abdullah Saleh also re-enters the scene, the former president, and allies himself with the Ansarullah rebel resistance, because he himself is also a Zaidi, right? Was
mhm,
was a Zaidi. But
yes,
eventually, this constant flip flopping of Ali Abdullah Saleh ends up costing him his life. He was killed in 2017 because he started to backtrack away from his allies in the Houthis and making sort of nice or reconciliation with Saudi Arabia, which worried the Houthis, and he was killed as he was fleeing Sana'a. In any case,
correct.
the
Mm,
civil war, which started around 2014, in which Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates heavily intervened militarily, eventually ended up costing them a lot, and both countries now have withdrawn, so sort of withdrawn from Yemen, although the Emiratis are still in control of some parts of southern Yemen and the important island of Socotra, which is not
that
far
is
from
true.
Somalia. Yeah.
Yes, it is like this. Yemen is an animal you cannot defeat it militarily. Yemenis, they can fight you for centuries. If you understand the psychology of Yemenis, then you analyze the cost benefit to have peace with them. It was better to integrate the Yemenis, which Saudi Arabia had also a huge economic interest. Of course, certain part of of Saudi Arabia, the southern part of Saudi Arabia, sometimes Yemenis claim. In fact, those who are living that part originally are Yemenis, Asir and Yumbo and this area. But even though Yemen proper have no such an influence, a lot of generation had passed since Saudi Arabia became a nation state since 1923. So nobody is going to change the border. I think the ruling class in Saudi Arabia could have been very wise, gradually, incrementally integrating Yemen, the greater Yemen, into their economic and political influence, and without antagonizing Yemenis. And by not doing this, they have given Yemen in a golden plate to Iran. That is the way I say they are the one who give this. But as far as United Arab Emirates is, I remember one Kuwaiti intellectual. He was speaking in one of the Arab television, and he was giving an advice to United Arab Emirates. He says that it is being small and try to be big. This is what we have tried in Kuwait, and we paid the price for that. And I advise United Arab Emirates, he said, you are too small to try to play a very big politics, somebody politics beyond your capacity. One day you will pay the price. And I do believe they will pay the price. They spend a huge amount of their money by intervening there and interfering there. And in Yemen itself, that it is also their influence have dwindled. So their slogans that it is, there are forces away from our region are intervening in our region. They are not handling it properly. If they really wanted to have a good neighborhood of the Red Sea, then they could have said and they have discussed that that was the Eritrean position was. We don't want anybody to come to disturb our neighborhood, and we can defend it together. But the technique of defending must be discussed in a very rational, logical way. But
You
this
are
didn't
you are
happen.
talking, of course, about Eritrea's position, which was presented in April 2019, about 4 years and a half ago, at the Jeddah summit on Red Sea security, in
Indeed.
which all these littoral states of the Red
Yes.
Sea, including Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Eritrea, Yemen, Djibouti, and Somalia participated. And
Indeed.
Eritrea had at that conference presented the
Yes.
12-point strategic vision of how to ensure Red Sea security
But
by
yes,
working
that
in synergy and
yeah.
cooperation.
But they never understood, because you could see that understanding even before that, that you could see at one time Ali Abdullah Saleh jumping in wagon with Malay Zenawi of Ethiopia and Bashir and the late president of Somalia, Abdullah Yusuf, and all this. They have created the Sana'a group to isolate Eritrea. I mean, it is. They do. You could see these people. Somebody tells them to do that, but it is the real problem is that how to bring a good neighborhood, and a good neighborhood to bring certain standard ethical value, political consciousness is needed, and that is the position of Eritrea was put in there. But unfortunately, they didn't listen to it because they don't because each state, big or small, wants to behave as they want, and now they are in problems. Sudan have collapsed, which was part of Sana'a, because of their miscalculation of the Islamists in power in Sudan, which brought now a serious problem for Sudanese people, and the miscalculation of the TPLF also, which have disappeared. And the result of it now, it is the president of Tigray is saying that Tigray is in famine. I mean, it is very how shallow-minded leadership they can bring disaster to their population They don't think beyond their masters or beyond their stomach further. And the Eritrean proposal was, we can control our region if we can cooperate. If somebody very far from our area is coming to disturb the region, we can work together. We can handle it together. We can divide the job. We will also put the fund for it. There is no problem, because this is our neighborhood. We have to make peace in our region to prevail and so on. But I don't think that Eritrea's opinion was listened, and now they are in this problem. They pulled other forces to come into the region. Who pushed the Houthis to be like this? Who pushed them? It is because of this, the wrong understanding policy of the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and now they are paying the price for it.
Mhm. But the argument also now that complicates matters further in this Red Sea security crisis we are witnessing is that the Zionist state in Israel, led by right-wing Netanyahu and his allies, has unleashed a genocidal war on the people of Gaza. Which, the entire world is now against it. And the Ansar Allah in Yemen are conducting this attacks on ships with relationship to Israel, ships that are either going to the port of Eilat, Israeli port of Eilat, or have somehow some kind of relationship with the state of Israel. They are either attacking them or holding them hostage. And this has created, of course, in the Red Sea, the insurance rate for ships, cargo ships, has gone sky high. Many cargo ships are avoiding the Red Sea route and going the longer route through the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa all the way to Europe, which doubles the time, I think, by 2 weeks to 1 month. And the cost of fuel, of course. These huge cargo ships consume, some say, about 300,000 gallons of oil, fuel a day. So that increases the cost. Eventually, this is going to increase the price of oil and the price of consumer goods coming from the supply chain from China and what have you for the Far East. So the linkage between the war in Gaza and the Houthis' position, some say, is understandable and has gained for them sympathy throughout the Arab world. And in fact, the vast population of Saudi Arabia is against the war in Gaza. This opinion polls say over 90% of the Saudi population is in sympathy with the Palestinians, is against Saudi Arabia entering into the coalition created currently by the United States to guard the Red Sea in the Bab el-Mandeb area. This coalition called through the Operation Prosperity Guardian. So your thoughts on this, if you can connect all these dots, and how can the crisis be resolved?
Very good. It's a very good question. Just before what happened in Gaza, that the Israeli diplomacy and United States diplomacy via Emirates, they were trying to resume and integrate Arab Muslim countries to resume with Israel, with the concept that Israel should be integrated into the region. And the overall project, it is an American project. American project in a sense that it is make sure no other energy supplies outside their own supplies should not reach Europe. They blow up the pipeline which is coming from Russia. We have seen it.
The Nord
They have
Stream
the Nord
pipelines. Yeah.
Stream. They have encircled Europe and they have kept Europe under, in fact, they became a vassal state. So if you wanted to maintain Europe to continue a vassal for a very long time, you have to build a new pipeline which passes through Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia until the harbor of Israel, Haifa. And to prepare to that you have to create a political atmosphere, and that it is other countries, Muslim and Arab countries, they have to resume their relationship with Israel and they have to be in the speaking term. The first country which did is that it is the Emirates. You know, last year more than 600,000 Israeli tourists visited the United Arab Emirates. So this policy was continued.
You are talking about the so-called Abraham Accords
Abraham Accords.
peace
So
that was
very
brought
good.
between Emirat and Bahrain
Indeed.
and Israel.
Indeed.
Sudan and Morocco joined later under the Trump administration in 2019, I
Yes,
believe, or
correct.
2017.
And it extended to Chad and so on, including to Sudan. So this Abraham Accord is the Trojan horse which was put in front of line, and then gradually to integrate Israel within the region economy, and Israel will be the dominant one.
And to somehow bring Saudi Arabia into this
Yes, there was a
accord.
negotiation, a secret negotiation was going on. So all these have collapsed because of the revolt in Gaza. And these have changed the opinion of most of Arab people, whether in Saudi Arabia or everywhere. And the brutal attack of the Zionist state on the Palestinians, it show it is nature, and they have showed on their in their own interest. This is one. That pipeline is closed. The other pipeline, which supplies Iran, it supplies Israel, oil is coming from Azerbaijan. From Azerbaijan via Turkey is coming to them. In fact, Mossad have a very big office in Azerbaijani capital, try to destabilize Iran from the other side. You know that the second biggest nationality in Iran are Azeris, and Azeris are the same Azeris like Azerbaijan, and they have built a base
Uh,
there.
Ayatollah Khamenei himself is of
Himself is an
Azeri
Azeri.
origin.
Is
Yes.
an
Yeah.
Azeri. Yes, that's why I suggest that we have to speak about Iran next time, and to that our young people to understand.
Inshallah,
But
in the next episode.
yes, all this now it went underwater because the U.S. They wanted to sell their own oil, not from United States, but this Arab oil considered theirs, and that it is Europe will be totally dependent on them. And of course, yes, they have encircled also Europe. They have no access. The strategy of United States to make sure Russian oil and gas should not come to Europe. The same also Iranian oil and gas should not come to Europe. So to build a new pipeline, and that pipeline also now is shattered. The process of this Gaza war will bring also American military bases in danger, which is by force in Libya and in Syria, and also 9 military bases in Iraq.
All in
Now,
all, there are over 25 military bases of the United States in the Middle East.
very good. To come to our region, to quote the Kuwaiti intellectual, what he said, that it is to play beyond your capacity. Being small, little bit you have oil money, but trying to behave big. It will one day cost you heavy as it costed Kuwait. He was right. Now is the one who's trying to play big. It is Emirates money. Emirates money had penetrated, and Emirate influence had penetrated Ethiopia, Sudan, Chad, until Libya after. All these are, you could say, Emirates boys. But can Emirates maintain this? Can Emirate? What is the interest of Emirates? If you say, in concrete, Emirates build one of the biggest gold refinery in the world in the Emirates. And they are only interested in the smuggled gold that they are accumulating and refining it in their refineries in the Emirates. But Emirates also, 2 islands of Emirates was taken by Iran. And if Emirates had a policy of having safe Red Sea, good neighborhood, they could have reasoned rational. But I have the feeling is that they are not reasoning rational, and one day they will pay the price. Who made the Houthis strong? It is the misguided policy of the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. That is it, to conclude. And now
Okay.
the Houthis are too strong and very difficult to overthrow them. You cannot invade them, and so on. And they are now in a trap.
The extremely, shall we say, destructive intervention of United Arab Emirates in our region, the Horn of Africa, is of course obvious. One of their rationale is, of course, to control ports from Somalia, Mogadishu, Berbera. They had ambitions of controlling Djibouti, but they fell out with the Ismail Omar Gelle regime there. And so that is outside their control. They tried Eritrea, but that didn't go anywhere. They are, of course, backing one faction in the Sudan civil war currently, the Hemeti, General Hemeti faction. He himself has control of the Sudanese gold mining, of which annually it's estimated about revenues estimated 16 million, and of this 95% at least is owned by the Emiratis, they say. So as you said, to exert influence beyond its capacity, to punch above its weight, so to speak, seems to be the current interventionist trend of the Emirati ruling class. But as you said, down the road there will be repercussions, negative repercussions with this interventionist policy. For the immediate future, though, this intervention is exacerbating the crisis of peace and stability in the Horn of Africa, the civil war that's raging in Sudan has the hand of the Emiratis there. In Ethiopia also, to a large extent, the Emiratis are the main backers of the Abiy Ahmed government. So where does this stop? I mean, we are talking about people of the Horn of Africa, all in all, maybe 150 million. The fate, the livelihood, the peace and stability of these 150 million people is in the balance. Again, this insecurity, now to add to it the Red Sea crisis, which then is linked further to war up north in Gaza, does indeed make the situation extremely complex. How do you see the final resolution of this crisis? Or is there a diplomatic resolution of it? Is there the fear of the war widening engulfing the entire Middle East, with the US and its allies on one side, and Iran and the resistance axis, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, of course in Gaza, Hamas and the resistance, and in the south, the so-called Houthis, Ansar Allah. There does not seem to be much hope for a diplomatic resolution, but Are there some moves to indicate that eventually this Gaza war can end? Because so far, 84 days, they have not been able to control it. This seems to be the longest war for the Israelis. And the resistance, the fierce resistance of, admirable resistance of the Palestinians seems to go unabated, although the death toll, 21,000, is too high, and of this, the majority are children, women. Very tragic situation that the entire world, almost, it seems, has condemned. So this bleak scenario, where does it end? Is the question our viewers need an
Very
answer.
good questions, difficult and very good questions. First of all, I think the Likud and the extreme religious parties in Israel, they have destroyed Israel inside. The contradiction among the Israeli citizen, it will be bigger and bigger. I think Netanyahu and his group, they understood this, what happened in Gaza, they can crash it in a very shorter thing. But they didn't knew that it is the younger generation and the Palestinian fighters, they can fight for a very long time and they can sacrifice. Even the Palestinian population, despite it is suffering in Gaza, their children and so on, elderly killed, they say, we are with the resistance. So a determined population have decided that not to live and enslave anymore. That you teach the people by domination and by killing and by war, you teach them also how to fight. And now it is more than 82 days, and he's not succeeding in anything, and he's now there is a squabbling or a fight within the Israeli courts. That is one side. Second, globally, they have lost humanity. That it is the Zionists, what they were selling before, that they were victims and so on, it vanished. So it is the legitimacy of the Zionist state, it's in question today. If I am an Israeli now, I will not walk in the street with my head up. What it is done now on the Palestinians, it is a very shameful, and the whole world have seen it, and they have lost the propaganda, they have lost their legitimacy, they have lost the mind. Not only that, Gaza became now, it is a motor of young people everywhere to protest, including American young Jewish, everybody everywhere, from China to United States, everywhere in the globe, in Latin America, and so on. This is unthinkable 2-3 years ago. So I think they will pay the price for that, and the Palestinian people also will pay. Second is that the demographic situation, which frightens them. Today, demographically, the population of Palestinian and Israelis is equal, or Palestinian population is more. That they have never solved also. You can only a settler colonialism you can solve, as Vladimir Jabotinsky, the hero or the guru of the Likud party. He says he can only accept that Palestinians, they become insignificant minority in Israel, then they can be head of state. This is his work, which he published it in 1920, and the title of the book is that We and the Arabs, the Iron War. I really advise anybody who lives in the United States and Europe to go and to find it in the library and to read it. In fact, he was not insulting Arabs at that moment. He was insulting the Irish, because he says that any child who reads the Irish history, he can fight us. Ireland is the first English colony. It took her 800 years. They lost their language. There was a famine. Half of their population were killed, and so on. But in 1990, they got independence after 800 years. So the will of the people, if it is there and so on, whatever it takes, it will come. To come to the Emirates. Emirates is not a state. It is a state.
Before you go there, though, if we may add, currently, South Africa has initiated court proceedings at the International Court in The Hague against these crimes against humanity and genocide that the Israeli state is perpetrating on the civilian population of Gaza. There are others in Latin America who are breaking off ties. I believe Bolivia has withdrawn her embassy. Overall, the global sympathy with the plight of the Palestinian people, the struggle of the Palestinian people is on the rise. And like you said, the Zionist state is isolated, except for the United States and a few others in UN General Assembly resolutions that are passed for the past 2-3 months. It seems the entire world is showing their sympathy and their solidarity with the Palestinian people. Just to add to what you've been saying. So go ahead now and
to come to our region. I think if you look the intervention or so-called intervention of Emirates, not Emirate of one man, the leader of Emirates, he have a fantasy in his head to build his own empire from distance because he have some few money in his hand. I think that will fail. What will make now gradually that the Emirate policy in Sudan, gradually the Sudanese people and the Sudanese patriotic forces will study it, will digest it, will see it, and will see that number one enemy of the Sudanese people is Emirates and it is leadership. They see now the use since the change in Ethiopia since 2018. The Emirates, they said they are going to build a tourist resort in Addis Ababa, and the government of Prime Minister Abiy gave them a chunk of land and so on. Until now, they didn't build anything. They were waiting. Now it is gradually because of a lot of other tactical and strategical mistakes, they have put him in their pocket and they don't give him. The situation in Ethiopia, the population, the masses of Ethiopian people are suffering. Security is deteriorating in the capital. There is now famine is looming in the north and so on. Inevitable, there will be a resistance against it, and this a pickpocket policy of the Emirates. Emirates is a pickpocket country. It doesn't have a strategy for nothing. A pickpocketer only thinks how to steal from your pocket. They are concentrating only stealing of African gold from Zimbabwe on and this, which is passing through Kenya via Mombasa toward the Emirates, and then maybe Ethiopian gold and Sudanese gold and so on. That's why quickly they build this big refinery there. Emirates ruling class is a very shallow one. Again, I advise them, the advice of the Kuwaiti intellectual, what we said. We thought we are bonanzas, said we are Tarzans, because we have few oil fields and we got some money and so on. Then we thought the sky is the limit. And finally that Iraq invaded us and took us, and all the population have migrated and suffered for 6 months and so on. We came back. And he said, now we know what does it mean peace. Probably United Arab Emirates is they are playing gambling, but that gambling one day they will pay for it. As far as the Red Sea, in the Red Sea, not everybody is crazy. If you see the Europeans, they refuse to join the coalition of United States. The coalition of United States is United States and Seychelles and another country, small country somewhere in Indian Ocean, Bahrain. So this is a fake. It is fake because Bahrain is the biggest military base of United States is in Bahrain.
The U.S. Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain.
Is there? Yes. So it's a joke. I mean, it is. But
neither Saudi Arabia nor United Arab Emirates have entered the coalition.
Yes.
Nor
I think
Qatar,
the serious.
for that matter.
Yes. Qatar
Nor
is
Turkey.
Yes. The serious states which have to study and come into agreement and initiate instead of using a slogan and so on and accept their mistakes in Yemen is Saudi Arabia. If Saudi Arabia, they can correct their policy that they have made a mistake in Yemen, and it is because they pushed the Yemenis to in the hand of the Iranians. Reapproachment with Yemen, they have to start, and they can use the good office of President Isaias, which also to make why it failed, why their ideas it failed, why their thing it failed. They have to make an analysis and come with a best solution, midterm and maximum term. And I think I'm sure they will very soon will come to their sense. And this is what the Eritrean policy had always said. President Isaias talked about a good neighborhood, particularly in this Red Sea area. One of his major principles is that nobody should be isolated. Everybody who lives here have to come and to discuss. If we are facing a danger, then we can organize, we can develop and defend ourselves. We can put also the fund of it. But it is if only one from six is feeling insecure, or two people feel insecure, there is a problem. So why makes him to feel insecure? Is it an delusional secure? Is it something psychological that it is? I think I hope that the Saudi leadership differs from the Gulf countries' leadership. To a certain extent, they made a fundamental mistake on Yemen. They know it that. And that's why at the end they stopped and they withdrew. But it is possible to discuss with them. I am sure,
Pragmatic, you would say.
yes, I am sure the people like Prince Turkey, who had been leading the intelligence service of Saudi Arabia, who built a very big think tank. If we will invite him today and so on, he have a critical point on United States policy, British United policy. He said is that it is their reasoning. The problem is that now is even in Washington, those who design policies, they are very shallow people. They don't even understand U.S. interest. They brought United States in a very big crisis everywhere. Look now, imagine, to conclude, that they invaded Iraq and they surrendered it to Iran. What they have achieved, except their military bases.
And of course, millions of Iraq is dead, and the
Yes,
destruction of once vital.
and their money and their soldiers also.
Mhm.
The
In this
same.
regard, of course,
They went to
Mohammed,
Afghanistan.
the chief of staff of the late Colin Powell, who was at one time Secretary of State of the United States, his chief of staff, his name is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, does seem to agree with what you're saying, that the current neoconservative cabal in ruling circles in Washington have made one blunder of the other, one war after the other, and continue in this reckless path of warmongering. So that being the case, and election season in the United States is coming up next year, and the multipolar world order emerging in our region, Saudi Arabia, Emirat, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran too, have joined the BRICS grouping. The current move towards de-dollarization seems to be picking up pace. In fact, it was the Chinese who made a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, two mortal enemies, to make peace and come together in fruitful cooperation. As a result of that, the Iranian president came to visit Saudi Arabia, attend the Islamic conference, Islamic Organization conference, and did address that, and did address the issue of the war in Gaza. So, as my question to you is, can a diplomatic solution come from the from the Russia, China, Iran axis, whereby instead of the war solution, the war widening in the Middle East, is a diplomatic resolution of this crisis in Gaza, and as a result, the crisis in the Red Sea come about through the intervention of, the newly emerging multipolar world order led by the Chinese and the Russians?
I think so. I do believe that the Saudi leadership, to a certain extent, is a very mature leadership, have a very long experience. They might make mistake there and there. But I'm sure that now they are willing, instead of keeping Yemen at bay, it's possible to bring Yemen. They could have resolved the Yemen problem. Anyway, the contradiction between the Houthis and the Yemeni government, it is in the hand of the Saudis. The Yemeni government, which have subsidized it, it is stationed in Saudi Arabia and so on. It didn't materialize. It didn't brought anything. The Emirates are traveling in southern Yemen because to spoil the Saudi policies. If the Saudis are very bold and discuss with serious people in the region and accept also their mistake, and what it will take to Saudi Arabia to pay compensation for Yemen? Nothing. Gradually, Yemeni's economy could be integrated with Saudi Arabia. Why they have to keep Yemen at bay and then always shout there is the Houthis are bringing the Iranians and so on? The Houthis are Arabs. They are closer to them. So I think I appeal to the Saudi government and use also their human intelligence they have and the experience they have with their partners like advanced leadership of Eritrea and others. They can manage. If you look, the Saudis could take an initiative. I'm sure the Saudi initiative with a rational way, addressing the past mistake and so on, discussing openly and seriously with Eritrea. To that extent, even discussing with Djibouti, because Djibouti have an allergy for Emirates, and despite of whatever Djibouti says, it have understood one thing from Emirates, and that Emirates are not a partner to trust with. Then, if we can, if this it is worked, it's possible that the Red Sea can be peaceful. The Houthis, they might stop their attack, and I think also Yemen, whether it is north or south, they have to be compensated because they were destroyed. But whatever they built the last 60 years was destroyed, Comrade Elias. And for that, somebody have to pay. And Saudi Arabia have the capacity to compensate Yemen. If they do that, a reconciliation in Saudi Arabia, a good number of business people are Yemenis origin, now Saudis, including the Bin Ladens. That any initiative and a goodwill from Saudi Arabia, all these Yemeni, Saudi rich people will be involved and they will support and they will stop this isolation of Yemen. That is my appeal will be, and be engaged also in the region effectively. The spoiler in the region, it is for one man is Emirates. Emirates must be stopped. What she's doing in Sudan must be stopped. What she's doing in Somalia must be stopped. What she's doing in Ethiopia must be stopped. And they are just, as I have told you, they are pickpocket. They only think a very small, and they have no any sentiment for the population who are living there. And they only incite antagonism, fawda, al-fawda al-khallaqa, as the Arabs, they say, leliba, ግርግር ይመቻል, as Amharas, they say. This is that it is there. They have no policy. These are just
the strategy of chaos is what you're
the
saying.
strategy of chaos.
Yes.
Yes, but it is a strategy of chaos, not of a bigger one. The strategy of chaos of a pickpocketer. You go to the bus station and he creates some problem, and then people, when they look that, they go to the pocket. The Emirates
in that regard, a young Eritrean YouTuber by the name who goes by the name of Allah Jabo recently said about the Emirati, the United Arab Emirates ruling class, These are people that give you a chicken and want to take a camel from you.
He's right. Correct description.
And so we're now approaching towards the end of we've gone over an hour and a half. I would like you to, by way of conclusion, we may elaborate on it in our next episode, but the crisis in the Horn of Africa, what happened to the vision of the new Horn of Africa, the optimism we had 5 years ago in 2018, the peace between Eritrea, Ethiopia, which later brought in Somalia. There was a lot of optimism on the ground, but it seems this was scuttled. And both Sudan is in deep crisis, deep civil war, tragic, for which our heart goes out to the people of the Sudan. In the same situation is unfolding in Ethiopia, unraveling towards an endless civil war. So how do you assess the resolution of these conflicts and the role of the United States in this? Is it playing a positive role in stabilizing? What is the special envoy Mike Hammer's role in this? After the TPLF's defeat and the signing of the cessation of hostilities last year at Pretoria, the civil war has not ceased in Ethiopia. It's aggravating. It's continuing in the Amhara region and elsewhere. So, what of the new Horn of Africa vision, and what needs to be done? Oh, we lost him. Well, let's hope he comes back quickly. Please continue to hit the like button and share. I hope you've been following our discussion. I see a lot of people are writing comments. Unfortunately, my screen is too small to read all of them, but I thank you all for your positive feedback, for your participation. Please share widely, and those of you who have not subscribed yet, consider subscribing so that you can follow us whenever we have discussions like this. So you're back, Mohammed.
Yes, it is. Sometimes it goes out.
Yeah, it happens. So let us go towards our conclusion. Your thoughts on the prospects for peace and stability and cooperation in the new Horn of Africa. I mean, despite the current crisis, of course, intellectually, our mind says we cannot be optimists, we have to be pessimists, but there has to be the optimism of the will of going forward beyond the current crisis.
That is a very good question. I think is the first in Ethiopia is what is we see on the ground is the optimism. The population reached to the level they cannot live like before, and the ruling class also reached to the level they cannot rule like before. So something is brewing. They have squandered that opportunity. It was an opportunity first to the all Ethiopian people in 2018, and then squandered one first by TPLF, and then now is by the government of Addis Ababa. The condition of the people is getting worse and deteriorating. It is a big part of Oromia. You could say 70% of Ethiopia is not under control of the government. For how long they can continue like that? Added to it the famine in Ethiopia and Tigray. The marginalization of the population and the poverty which is increasing in higher speed. So I think it cannot continue. It cannot continue like this. Somewhere it will explode. And our optimism is that it is, we believe that the people will get mature
Another glitch. Your connection is somehow. Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let's hope he comes back to give us his conclusion. Professor Mohamed Hassan from Belgium, our good friend and comrade, longtime friend of Eritrea. With deep knowledge of the Horn of Africa, as a geopolitical analyst, former diplomat, and I hope he comes back. Yes, he is back. Sorry about that.
It goes out.
Yes. So go to your conclusion then.
My conclusion is that it is the people will get maturer. Reality will teach them. In Ethiopia, I think it is the ruling class is not able to rule as before, and the population are not willing to live as before. And this means that it is. I remember when I wrote that small pamphlet, which is translated into Tigrinya, Ethiopia Kabe Nabe, or Ethiopia at Crossroad, that it is
from
for
where
the young
to where?
to where. My conclusion was there was two possibilities, or down or up. And unfortunately, now we are going down, and down in a sense, even for the so-called ruling class, is going down with it. But we have lived always for centuries in that part of the world. And I'm sure far-sighted people will emerge who can understand this, who understand their own situation, understand the neighborhood, understand their friend and their enemies, and so on. And I'm an optimist. There will be something new, inevitable.
And in Sudan?
The Sudan contradiction even is less complicated than the Ethiopian one. Sudanese are learning now because it's the same militia who's fighting them. It is they have created it. So once Sudanese are learning that they have entered a new era in their history, and that they need to really think properly, stop this fantasy of the petty middle class and intellectuals thinking and NGOs and depending with external handout from outside and so on. Sudan should not depend on anybody. Sudan, on the contrary, could feed some others. So they have to be very rational, build a fraternal relationship with their own people, and have also a good understanding with the region, who is their friends and who is not. And this will clarify for them. So the experience will teach everybody. And we hope that it will be very soon.
Well, indeed, we hope for the best while continuing to struggle against harmful foreign interventions in our region, and to call for peace and cooperation among people, struggling peoples throughout the countries of the Horn of Africa and beyond, of course, in Yemen and in the Gulf region, and in Gaza for the war to end there, and to find a quick resolution for the genocidal war to stop. Otherwise, a widening war that engulfs the entire region, the Middle East on this side and Horn of Africa on the other side, would have very devastating consequences for the peoples of this region, who have always sought peace and stability and cooperation. and to get themselves out of deep underdevelopment and build an economy and a system worth the long struggle of the people. So with that, if you have any concluding remarks before we wrap up this session, Mohammed?
I have no concluding remark. We are just at crossroad for a new situation. Always when in one side globally that one is gradually dying and something is emerging. Always difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
The dying one will trouble, incite wars, conflict, damages, and so on until it collapses. I see. I'm sure that the European people will not accept for very long time to be a vassal of United States for very long time. Their national interest, their own life, the life of their children and grandchildren is mortgaged for nothing. So they have to think. Because the political group or the political forces who are in the power, they are really very far from reality. They were kids when the Soviet Union collapsed. They were pumped day and night through Hollywood and everything and so on, and through their universities and educational system, inculcated that it is when they dream America. When they sleep America, and so on. And they have no organic relationship with their own people. This is becoming clearer in Europe, and a lot of Europeans are talking about it, and they are understanding. I think to conclude that history of human being, you can only guess it or analyze it on the basis of decay, and the coming decay will be, I'm sure of that,
Mm-hmm. We've lost him once again, but he has given us his insight. We thank our good friend and comrade Mohamed Hassan for his insightful analysis. I hope you have found this conversation helpful in making sense of the extremely complex crisis in the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa region. We will continue to monitor and highlight the crisis and the solutions as well. Please continue to support by subscribing, liking, and sharing, and giving us your feedback in the comment section. So with that, I am Elias Amare, your host, and until next time, goodbye.